Hey everybody, Glenn here with another episode of Deviation Sports Cards. Today I want to have a little bit of a different kind of video brought on by two things. First of all, this is a Derek Jeter rookie card I got graded a while back. I've had it on eBay now for, 4 or 5 weeks. These things are selling in PSA 10 for roughly, I'm going to say 125 to 150 bucks. I have this listed with a starting price of 75% of PSA comps with free shipping. And the other day I got an offer on this that said it was for $50 offer with free shipping, and said best I can do for that card and $12 grading. And I thought to myself, that's kind of weird that someone would say that to me, considering a lot of the PSA versions that exist of this probably only cost $8 to $10 to get graded back in the day. Same with BGS and SGC, before the 2020 boom and all of that. And then I've been doing a lot of searching on different groups. I see lots of discussions going on about who is the best grader and who isn't the best grader. And it seems like, to me, there's just a lot of opinions out there. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to just kind of go and see what do the grading companies actually say about their own products and the service that they're providing. Like, how are they defining what a gem mint is to each one of the big four grading companies? So I put together a little presentation. I want to walk through it here and just kind of try to give an unbiased view on what grader is providing the highest quality gem mint card based on, not my opinion, but the very definitions that they have for gem mint published on their websites. So we're going to go ahead and start into that. And we're going to start obviously with PSA. It's the big dog. Everybody thinks that they're the best. So again, I'm going to try to keep opinion out of this as much as possible. We're just going to read right through it. So right here is a definition of a PSA 10 as seen on their website. So basically it just says a PSA Gem 10 card is a virtually perfect card. Attributes include 4 perfectly sharp corners, sharp focus, and full original gloss. A PSA Gem Mint 10 card must be free of staining of any kind, but an allowance may be made for a slight printing imperfection if it doesn't impair the overall appeal of the card. The image must be centered on the card within a tolerance not to exceed approximately 55-45 to 60-40% on the front and 75-25% on the reverse. Now, the thing I found odd when I broke this down, looking at the 4 major grading categories, there is no specific reference to edges in the definition for gem mint at all. The only thing that you could even possibly ascertain from this is that the edges must be perfect, because of the very first sentence in the definition that says a PSA Gem Mint 10 card is virtually perfect card. So we're going to assume here, with no criteria listed, that it just means it has to have 4 sharp edges, because I don't know really what else to do without specific definition from PSA. Now if we move over to Beckett, the other, I guess, second most popular one, at least used to be, I don't know if it is anymore, but their definition is for a Gem Mint 9.5. Now obviously a gem or a black label Beckett 10 or even a pristine 10 are going to have higher criteria, but we're looking at Gem Mint classifications at this point. So basically they say centering must be 50-50 one way and 55-45 the other way on the front, 60-40 or better on the back. Corners must be mint to the naked eye, but slight imperfections are allowed under magnification. Edges are virtually mint to the naked eye. A speck of wear is allowed under intense scrutiny. And then the surface, you're allowed a few extremely minor print spots, detectable under only intense scrutiny, deep color, devoid of registration or focus imperfections, perfect gloss, and devoid of any scratches and metallic print lines. So BGS actually does a really good job of defining what each one of these criterias or what each one of these categories needs to meet from a criteria perspective to achieve a Gem Mint 9.5. So third up, we have SGC. Now they have a Gem 10 grade right here. Now they also have a pristine, but for the Gem, it says it must be 55 or 45 or better centering. It must have sharp focus, 4 sharp corners, must be free of stains, no breaks in the surface gloss, no print or refractor lines, and no visible wear. A slight print spot visible under close scrutiny is allowed if it does not detract from the aesthetics of the card. Now, weird thing here is not only do they not define edges, just like PSA doesn't, which means, again, I'm going to have to assume that all 4 edges must be sharp, but it also doesn't really specifically address back centering. Now, the only thing I could really ascertain from this would be that 55-45 back centering is also required, since it doesn't specifically say front or back centering, it just says centering. But knowing what I know about SGC and seeing some of the cards they grade, I'm going to assume it's probably going with like a 60-40, just like Beckett. It could be going 75-25, I don't know. So we're just going to kind of meet in the middle and say 60-40 for purposes of this conversation, because they just don't define it. And then CSG being the last one, they define a Gem Mint as a Gem Mint 10 is a card that has received a 10 grade overall. However, one of the grading criteria does not meet the requirements of a perfect 10. Corners will appear perfect to the naked eye and mint plus under 10 plus magnification. The surface is free of print spots and should also display perfect gloss and be devoid of any surface flaws. Centering is not to exceed 55-45, and reverse centering is not to exceed 75-25. Now, again, there's no specific notation for edges, which is weird that 3 of the 4 companies don't. But what it does say is it has to meet these perfect 10 criteria in order to even be considered for this Gem Mint 10. So without being any mention of edges at all, I have to assume that it needs to meet the perfect 10 criteria, which would be flawless under 10 times magnification. That's probably going extreme, but that's what the definition says. So those are the definitions of the 4 major grading companies and what defines a Gem Mint card. So if we break it down and we compare those in each individual category, if we look at corners first, you can kind of see Beckett and CSG mention that there can be some slight imperfections to the naked eye, or under magnification. PSA and SGC don't necessarily mention that there could be imperfections under magnification, but I think we can all agree from seeing 10s from both companies that under magnification there can be minor flaws. So to me, all 4 of these are really saying the same exact thing. So if I were to rank them, I'd say, they're all ranking number 1 because they all pretty much say the same exact thing when it comes to corners. Now, from centering perspective, a little bit different story. So probably the most, well, not probably, based on definition, the most strict grading company from a centering perspective is definitely Beckett. It's got 50-50 one way, 55-45 the other on the front, and only 60-40 or better on the back. The second strict or most strict one would be, I would say, a combo between SGC and CSG. Just because I don't know definitively what SGC requires for back centering, and the front centering is 55-45 or better for both of these companies, whereas that's a little bit more lax than Beckett, but it's a little bit more strict than PSA, which can allow up to a 60-40% on the front and 75-25 on the back. So this is kind of how the defined criteria for centering breaks down for these four companies. Now, looking at the third category, which is surface, every one of these has some type of identifier or allowing for slight perfections, with the exception of CSG. PSA allows for slight printing imperfections. Beckett mentions a few extremely minor print spots. SGC mentions a slight print spot visible under close scrutiny, whereas SGC or CSG basically says none of that's allowed. It can't have print spots. It must have perfect gloss. It has to be devoid of any surface flaws. So from this perspective, I would have to say that CSG grade from a surface perspective is probably the best surface that you're going to get on a gem mint card. And then I would say all the other three are pretty much the same. So they all would come in at number 2. Three-way tie for 2. And then the final criteria we looked at would be edges. And this one was really difficult because most of them didn't specifically mention edges at all, with the exception of Beckett. So I have to give Beckett number 1, because they're the only one that really, truly defines what they're looking for from edge perspective. I'd give number 2 spot to CSG, because it does reference the flawless criteria, which we would assume that it needs to be flawless under 10-time magnification. And then SGC and PSA coming in last, because we don't really know what they will or won't allow, because they don't even really discuss it. So that's how I think the edge category falls out. So when you clump this all together and you're saying, okay, if I'm grading my card and I want to evaluate whether it is one of the best conditioned cards in existence for that particular card, who is going to give me a gem mint and make me believe, based off the criteria that they have in place for a gem mint, that my card actually is one of the best conditioned cards out there? And based off of these criteria, their criteria, again, not my opinion, but the criteria they identify on their website, Beckett has got to be number 1. If you buy a Beckett 9.5 gem mint, that card is in good condition. Better condition, potentially, than any of these other grading companies. Now, it's not to say that any of these other grading companies couldn't have a gem mint that's equally as good, but it means it's pretty much a guarantee that if you have a Beckett 9.5, it's going to cross over into a 10 with any one of these other categories, because their criteria is more strict almost across the board, with the only exception being surface. Number 2 overall, I have to say, goes to CSG. They're the most strict when it comes to corners and surface, and they're right behind Beckett in terms of centering and edges. SGC, I would have to say, is number 3, and really kind of right in line with CSG, to be honest with you, because they only had this number 3 here because there's really no defined specifics in regards to how they grade edges. And then PSA is coming in last, which is, to me, not a real big surprise, because if you read the definition, it's by far the most forgiving in terms of what can achieve a gem mint grade. So I thought about this and I said, okay, well, let's take a popular card and see how this really applies in the marketplace. So you have, I went and found something that I could find a recent comp on for all 4 of these companies. And what I came up with was the 2020 Justin Herbert rated rookie base from Donruss Optic. And I started doing a little bit of deep dive into that particular card. So we just ranked all 4 of these companies by what I'm calling gem quality, based off their specific criteria. Who has the best quality gem mint, all the way down to the worst out of the 4? Now, not surprising, PSA has graded the most. And again, based off of their gem quality and the looseness in the criteria, 64.6% of all cards, of all of this particular card that were graded, received a gem mint grade. Beckett, on the other hand, who is probably the most strict when it comes to gem mint grading, has only graded 185, which is a 51.9% gem rate. So about 13% less than PSA. SGC, which is graded the second most at 937, has a gem rate of 43.5%, which is kind of surprising considering it's number 3 from a gem quality perspective. And then CSG has graded 314, and they're coming in at a gem rate of about 46.2. So, the only thing that I could say really about this is these bottom 3, the amount they've graded are pretty low, so the percentages could be a little skewed as a result of that. But I think it's pretty clear that all 3 of those companies have a lower gem rate than PSA because they all have what I would consider more strict grading criteria, or not even what I would consider, what their definitions say. They have tighter requirements for gem mints than PSA does. So how does that translate over into sales? So I went and on the 130 point, and I pulled up the most recent sale for each one of these grading companies for that specific card. And you can see that PSA recently had a sale for $274.99. Beckett 9.5 gem, sadly, only pulled in $79. SGC came in at $142.50, and then CSG came in at $127.50. So I got to thinking, okay, if grading a card is really about determining quality and how that card ranks in comparison to every other card that's been created, then the only delta between grading companies could either be based off of their criteria or how much the grading costs in and of itself. So just like the comment that the man said to me, well, this is only worth this amount of money, and this is all I'm willing to pay you based off a $12 grading. So I went ahead and put in the grading cost for each one of these and made a few assumptions based on the fact that this card came out in 2020. So I'm assuming the best price anybody would have gotten to get that card graded from Beckett or PSA would have been a $50 grading cost. And once I subtract that grading cost off of the sale value, you can see that the card value, so to me, once you take the grading cost out, the money that you're spending on that card should be representative of what that card is worth, because the $50 is what was put into it for grading, and if it got a gem mint 10, it didn't devalue it. So especially on a modern card like this, so that must mean you think that Justin Herbert, in the case of the PSA, you think that Justin Herbert card in that PSA case is worth $224.99. Where on the other hand, Beckett, after you subtract the grading cost off, would only be a $29. And it's amazing to see the difference here. I mean, PSA has the easiest gem, which is by far worth the most, at least from a buyer's perspective. And then a BGS 9.5, which has the greatest probability of being a high quality card, sells for $29, by far the lowest. As to me, maybe that goes back to the psychological 9.5 versus 10 and people just not liking the 9.5. I don't know, but to me this is just criminal almost, the delta here. And then CSG and SGC, once you subtract out the grading cost, which I assume the $30 grading cost for CSG or SGC and $12 for CSG, which this is now going up to 15, but that just happened, so I'm assuming that this at best would have gotten graded at a bulk pricing. So that I pretty much took like the lowest grading cost I could take based on the time frame. And you can see SGC and CSG kind of came in about the same card value. CSG at 125.50, and SGC at 112.50. So really interesting to see how the market views a gem mint card based on the grading company and how it's juxtaposed to the actual criteria required to get that grade. So if I throw all these together, you can see here you've got your gem quality, your gem plus rarity, and when I say gem plus rarity, that's what I used the pop report for. That meant any card that got a 10 or greater out of the entire population of graded cards. The grading cost, and then card value. So again, it just goes back to what I've been saying all along in the video here is if I look at the grading criteria for each one of these companies and rank them, and then rank the gem rate, the grading cost, and then the card value, which is to me after grading cost removed, this is what it looks like. So I think it's really interesting to look at it from this perspective and just try to take all the noise out of it and say, okay, I'm not a PSA fanboy, I'm not a Beckett fanboy, I'm not trying to protect the value of my collection. I'm just looking at what is a gem mint, how is it defined from each individual grader, and how does that play out in terms of gem rate and card value. And I think it's really interesting to see that in play. So I guess my question at the end of all this is, why do you think this is? I mean, why is the market treating these four grading companies in this way? Is it because people just aren't taking the time to read the criteria to understand that, you know, in this case, Beckett is, you know, more strict than any of the other companies, therefore a Beckett 9.5 has the highest probability of being truly a gem mint card? Why is there such a value put on PSA when they come in last in almost every category? Why is CSG struggling so much to get a foothold when they're really right behind Beckett in terms of card quality? And then SGC, you know, really kind of in the mix there as well. Not a whole lot of difference between CSG. So, you know, I wanted to put this out there, kind of give people the facts. And then I kind of like to let you guys let me know in the comments what you guys think. I mean, why do you think it is this way? Why knowing the information in this video, why is the market the way it is? So let me know in the comments. And like I said before, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'd really appreciate it. I could, you know, I've been trying to grow this channel. This is a little bit something different for me. But it was something that really interested me, and it just got me thinking, seeing everything going on, you know, recently on social media and everywhere else. It just makes me wonder why things are the way they are, and why, you know, a card like this, which based off the criteria that we just reviewed, is probably a higher quality card than some of the cards just like it that have sold recently, and I can't even get 75% comps out of this. If you're buying the card and you're not buying the case that it's in, why is this card undervalued just because it's in this slab? So let me know let me know what you think in the comments. I'd really be interested to hear what people have to say and interact with them on that, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for watching.